Nós, estudantes do curso de Relações Internacionais da PUC São Paulo e integrantes do grupo de estudo sobre conflitos internacionais, em parceria com o Democracy Now!, apresentaremos as principais notícias da semana.
A partir de agora, com legendas em português, vincularemos os principais destaques internacionais.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The violence that has to date left an estimated 280 people dead and 1,830 injured has been overwhelmingly perpetrated by the state and by pro-government armed elements. And those killed also include at least 19 police officers.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says the death toll from anti-government protests in Nicaragua is approaching 300. Both opposition groups and pro-government forces are accused of violence, including kidnappings and killings. We'll host a debate with Julio Martinez-Ellsberg, advisor to one of the main student movements opposing the Nicaraguan government, and Camilo Mejia, the well-known Nicaraguan-American Iraq war resistor and son of the famed Sandinista singer Carlos Mejia Godoy, who was active in the struggle to overthrow the Somoza dictatorship in the 70s, but no longer supports the Sandinista government. Camilo Mejia, his son, wrote an open letter to Amnesty International condemning the organization for its role in Nicaragua. He supports the Sandinista government today. Then former President Obama marks the centennial of Mandela's birth with a speech full of thinly veiled criticism of President Trump.
We see the utter loss of shame among political leaders where they're caught in a lie and they just double down and they lie some more.
We'll get response from Mandela's close friend, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and talk to him about the protests in Chicago over the police killing of yet another African-American man. Then this week marks 4 years since Eric Garner was killed when a white New York City police officer wrestled him to the ground and applied a fatal chokehold while Garner said, "I can't breathe," 11 times. The officer continues to work for the New York Police Department, and Garner's mother is demanding justice.
All those officers that day, they need to stand accountable for what they did to my son. They killed him. He was unarmed.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Under a barrage of bipartisan criticism, President Trump said Tuesday he misspoke in the news conference in Helsinki after a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This was Trump's original statement about alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election.
People came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
That was Trump speaking Monday in Helsinki alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin. But Tuesday, after news anchors, lawmakers, and members of the intelligence community decried his comments as treasonous, Trump said he'd misspoken, mistakenly saying would when he meant to say wouldn't.
Just to repeat it, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. And the sentence should have been, and I thought it would be maybe a little bit unclear on the transcript or unclear on the actual video. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative. So you can put that in, and I think that probably clarifies things pretty good by itself.
In rare public comments, former President Barack Obama issued a thinly veiled criticism of President Trump, denouncing the rise of strongman politics while Obama was speaking in Johannesburg, South Africa, at an event marking the centennial of Nelson Mandela's birth.
I am not being alarmist. I am simply stating the facts. Look around. Strongman politics are ascendant suddenly, whereby elections and some pretense of democracy are maintained, the form of it, but those in power seek to undermine every institution or norm that gives democracy meaning.
That was former U.S. President Barack Obama speaking at the centennial commemoration of the birth of Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned for 27 years in apartheid South Africa before being released and becoming South Africa's first black president. He would have turned 100 years old today. We'll have more on Mandela's life later in the broadcast with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. In more news on Trump's comments about Russia, a New York Times photographer took a photo of his prepared remarks, showing a Sharpie was used to cross out the phrase, anyone involved in that meddling to justice, in reference to prosecuting those involved in the alleged interference in the U.S. elections. The prepared remarks also showed the words, there was no collusion, scrawled in Sharpie in the margins of the paper. After delivering his statement yesterday, Trump launched a tweet storm attempting to defend his comments in Helsinki, tweeting last night, the meeting between President Putin and myself was a great success, except in the fake news media, unquote. Trump also tweeted this morning, so many people at the higher ends of intelligence love my press conference performance in Helsinki. Putin and I discussed many important subjects at our earlier meeting. We got along well, which truly bothered many haters who wanted to see a boxing match. Big results will come, unquote. On Capitol Hill, Senate committees are holding hearings today and tomorrow on President Trump's proposal to reorganize the federal government. Trump's plan includes merging the Labor Department with the Education Department, privatizing the U.S. Postal Service, and radically transforming the Interior Department. In response to Trump's proposal, the American Federation of Government Employees says, quote, there's little reason to believe this reorganization plan is anything more than a scheme to eliminate essential programs and public service jobs, reward or punish political appointees, and privatize government programs to reward political donors, AFME said. The European Union and Japan signed one of the world's largest free trade agreements during a meeting of leaders in Tokyo Tuesday. The trade deal will cover a quarter of the global economy. It comes as the Trump administration has imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum from the European Union, threatened to incite a trade war with China, and pulled out of sweeping trade deals like the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership. In East Africa, the first direct flights between Ethiopia and Eritrea in 20 years have taken off from Addis Ababa, headed to Eritrea's capital Asmara this morning. Al Jazeera reports the majority of the flight's passengers were members of families separated by the long-running state of war between the neighboring countries. The resumed flights come as part of a historic peace effort to end the 20-year conflict. In Spain, a three-day strike by Amazon workers continues despite repression by Spanish police who attacked striking workers Tuesday and arrested at least 2 people. The attack in Spain came as thousands of Amazon workers in Germany and Poland also went on strike. This is Spanish union leader Douglas Harper speaking about the international strike action.
The local management, which is handling the negotiations here, have told us that management at headquarters in the United States have placed a glass ceiling which they cannot break. So we hope that with these mobilizations, the glass ceiling expands and comes closer to what we are demanding.
And activists and educators have successfully raised enough money to erect a monument to honor famed journalist, abolitionist, and suffragist Ida B. Wells. The fundraising effort was first launched over a decade ago by Ida B. Wells' great-granddaughter, Michelle Duster. The $300,000 monument will be designed and built by celebrated African-American sculptor Richard Hunt and installed near Ida B. Wells' former home in Bronzeville, Chicago. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The missiles that kills us, American-made. The plane that kills us, American-made. The tanks, Abrams, American-made. You're saying to me, where is America? America is the whole thing.
American-made bombs in Yemen are killing civilians, destroying infrastructure, and fueling anger at the U.S. That's the title of a new PBS NewsHour report. This is UN Humanitarian Coordinator Lise Grande.
The reality of their life is that when they wake up in the morning, they have no idea if they will eat that day. No idea. 8.5 million people are in that category. The UN estimates that by the end of the year, if there is not an end to this war, another 10 million Yemenis will be in that same situation. That's 18 million innocent civilians who are the victims of this war.
We'll speak with PBS correspondent Jane Ferguson, who smuggled herself into Yemen for her remarkable three-part PBS series. But first, we go to Pakistan, which has suffered the third deadliest attack in the country's history, just as it's set to hold general elections overshadowed by hundreds of arrests and accusations of widespread interference by the military.
The Army's role in this election is only to support the Election Commission of Pakistan. We will support them in all the tasks they have requested. The Pakistani military will have no direct role in the conduct of the elections.
We'll go to Lahore to speak with journalist and writer Munazeh Jahangir. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Donald Trump continued to sow confusion Tuesday over whether he believes Russia's meddling in U.S. elections, a day after he said he misspoke in a Helsinki news conference following his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. On Monday, Trump tried to walk back his remark that he didn't see any reason why Russia would have meddled in the 2016 election after intelligence officials and lawmakers of both parties decried his comments as treasonous. On Tuesday, Trump appeared to go a step further in his reversal, telling CBS News he held Putin personally responsible for interfering in U.S. elections.
Do you agree with U.S. intelligence that Russia meddled in the election in 2016?
Yeah, and I've said that before, Jeff. I have said that numerous times before. And I would say that that is true, yeah.
But you haven't condemned Putin specifically. Do you hold him personally responsible?
Well, I would, because he's in charge of the country, just like I consider myself to be responsible for things that happen in this country. So certainly, as the leader of a country, you would have to hold him responsible, yes.
Trump's assertion came as his hand-picked FBI director, Christopher Wray, told NBC News Russia's efforts to subvert U.S. elections remain very active. When asked by a reporter Tuesday if Russia was continuing to target the U.S., Trump replied no, twice.
Is Russia still targeting the U.S., Mr. President?
Thank you very
let's
much.
go. Make your way out. No, you don't believe that to be the case? Let's go. We're going to...
At the White House, Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Trump's no remark was aimed at ending reporters' questions and was not actually a response to a question about Russian interference.
We had a chance to speak with the president after those comments, and the president said thank you very much and was saying no to answering questions.
This comes as the White House said it won't rule out a request by Vladimir Putin to have the Russian government question former U.S. diplomatic personnel, including former ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, now a professor at Stanford. Critics have blasted the Trump administration's proposal as an assault on the principle of diplomatic immunity. It came as part of a proposal by Putin that would allow U.S. investigators to interview 12 Russians named in indictment by Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation earlier this month, claiming they were part of a plot to interfere with the 2016 elections. In exchange, Russian investigators would be granted interviews in the U.S. with Ambassador McFaul and 10 other Americans, including Bill Browder, an outspoken opponent of Putin. In 2009, Browder's lawyer and accountant, the Russian whistleblower Sergei Magnitsky, died in a Russian jail under suspicious circumstances. His death became the basis of a U.S. sanctions law against Russia, the Magnitsky Act. President Trump questioned a key provision of the NATO military alliance, the mutual defense of NATO member countries. Trump made the remark during an interview with Fox News host Tucker Carlson.
Why should my son go to Montenegro to defend it from attack? Why is that?
I understand what you're saying. I've asked the same question. You know, Montenegro is a tiny country with very strong people.
Yeah, I'm not against Montenegro or Albania.
No, by the way, they're very strong people. They're very aggressive people. They may get aggressive, and congratulations, you're in World War III.
In In Illinois, state officials are investigating the Chicago nonprofit Heartland Alliance over allegations it housed children separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border, with many of the children reportedly suffering abuse and neglect. The Washington Post reported one boy at Heartland Alliance's facility, Casa Guadalupe, was repeatedly injected with a drug that made him drowsy, while another boy was denied medication for weeks after injuring his arm. The Washington Post also reports children were surveilled with hidden cameras and prevented from hugging their siblings. This comes ahead of a July 26 court-imposed deadline for the Trump administration to reunite all 3,000 separated children from their parents, and after the Trump administration said Monday it can't find the parents of 71 of the children. Former coal industry lobbyist Andrew Wheeler, the new acting administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, approved a new rule Tuesday that guts restrictions on the handling of coal ash, the toxic waste generated at hundreds of coal-fired plants around the U.S. The new rules were put in place in 2015 after a string of high-profile toxic spills in North Carolina and Tennessee. Wheeler became acting head of the EPA earlier this month after former EPA head Scott Pruitt stepped down amidst a string of corruption scandals. In Yemen, Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility for a drone attack on a Saudi state oil company refinery in Riyadh. But the oil company, Saudi Aramco, said a fire at the refinery was due to an operational incident. This comes as Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi indicated rebels are prepared to hand over the crucial port of Hodeidah to the United Nations if the U.S.-backed Saudi-led coalition stops military operations there, which have forced tens of thousands of civilians to flee. The UN has warned the offensive may severely exacerbate the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Yemen, which is already experiencing the world's worst cholera epidemic, with more than 1 million people afflicted and with millions more on the brink of famine. We'll go to a report on Yemen later in the broadcast. In Israel, lawmakers approved a bill Tuesday that defines Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, prompting Palestinians to warn Israel is sliding further into a system of apartheid. The new law declares Hebrew the country's only official language, diminishing the status of Arabic. It also encourages the building of Jewish-only settlements in occupied territory as a national value. The bill passed in a vote of 62 to 55 over the objections of Arab-Israeli lawmakers who threw papers into the air in protest after its passage. This is parliamentarian Ahmed Tibi.
The nationality bill is a hate crime. They are totally discriminating against the Arab citizens, against the Arab minority, with racist articles, especially those of Jewish settlements, and those articles downgrading the status of the Arabic language.
In the Mediterranean, at least 19 people are dead and 25 others still missing after a boat carrying more than 100 migrants capsized at sea off the coast of Cyprus Tuesday. The deaths came as Italy and other European countries have launched a crackdown on ocean vessels carrying migrants hoping to claim asylum in Europe. In Mexico, President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador says he'll take a 60% pay cut after he's inaugurated in December as a gesture toward cracking down on wasteful spending and government corruption. The pledge came as López Obrador, also known as AMLO, said he's open to a debate on the legalization of drugs in Mexico in a bid to end the drug war that's seen tens of thousands of Mexicans killed. This comes days after top Trump administration officials traveled to Mexico City last week to meet with AMLO. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was joined by senior White House advisor Jared Kushner and Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. The European Union has ordered a multi-billion euro fine against Google for violating antitrust rules, saying the high-tech giant unfairly used its dominant Android operating system to squelch competition. This is the European Competition Commissioner announcing the fine Wednesday.
Today, the Commission has decided to fine Google €4.34 billion for breaching EU antitrust rules. Google has engaged in illegal practices to cement its dominant market position in Internet search.
In Thailand, 12 boys rescued from a flooded cave last week were released from a hospital in Chiang Rai on Tuesday, appearing fit and happy after an 18-day ordeal that grabbed international headlines. After their release, the boys appeared with their soccer coach at a group press conference, telling reporters they were overjoyed when a pair of British divers first discovered them 9 days after they became trapped, and mourned the death of one of the Thai divers who tried to rescue them. In California, hot weather and bone-dry conditions have fueled a number of wildfires, including a 26-square-mile fire raging near Yosemite National Park. One firefighter's died. 2 others have been injured battling the blaze. The fires are being fueled by thousands of trees that died during an unprecedented drought that's gripped California for most of the last several years. In Japan, at least 12 people have died and nearly 10,000 others have been hospitalized after an intense heat wave settled in over much of Japan. In Gifu Prefecture, temperatures topped 105 degrees Fahrenheit Wednesday, the hottest temperature recorded in Japan in 5 years. The heat wave has prompted concerns about the 2020 Summer Olympics set to open in Tokyo 2 years from now. It comes on the heels of the most deadly flooding Japan has seen in decades after heavy rains killed at least 95 people and forced 2 million more people to flee their homes earlier this month. Scientists have linked record heat, heavy rainfall, and increased flooding to climate change. Muslim groups are condemning the U.S. and Canadian governments over a secretive terrorism watch list the 2 countries operate, saying innocent travelers have been stopped and interrogated and have had visas revoked after being falsely accused of ties to terror groups. Last month, The Guardian reported that the program Tip Off U.S.-Canada, or Tuscan, began in 1997 but was expanded in 2016 under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The group Muslim Advocates has filed a Freedom of Information Act request demanding U.S. documents on Tuscan, warning it could be part of a broader effort by President Trump to fulfill a campaign promise to create a registry of Muslims living in the U.S. In a statement, Muslim Advocate staff attorney Matthew Callahan said, quote, "The inaccuracy of the United States terrorist list is well documented, and their potential for misuse is compounded by President Trump's racially charged agenda. To then share this misinformation with another country is irresponsible and dangerous," he said. Papa John's founder, John Schnatter, told the pizza chain's board of directors he made a mistake when he stepped down as chairman amidst news reports he used a racial slur, the N-word, during a conference call in May. In a letter to Papa John's board, Schnatter complained he was pressured to resign without any investigation based on, quote, rumor and innuendo. Schnatter had already stepped down as CEO of the pizza chain earlier this year after he claimed that NFL player protests during the national anthem, which have been led by African-American players, were hurting his pizza sales. In breaking news, Spain's Supreme Court has withdrawn its international arrest warrants against former Catalonia President Carles Puigdemont and 5 others exiled Catalan politicians facing charges of rebellion. Last October, the Spanish government seized control of Catalonia after its leaders proceeded with a banned independence referendum. A new class action lawsuit on behalf of former wrestlers at Ohio State University accuses Republican Ohio Congressmember Jim Jordan of failing to prevent sexual abuse perpetrated by a university doctor. The men allege former team doctor Richard Strauss groped players on multiple occasions and that Jordan, who was then serving as assistant coach on the wrestling team, must have known about the molestation. Jordan has been floated as a possible replacement for outgoing Speaker of the House Paul Ryan and has denied any knowledge of sexual abuses. And a group of 141 survivors who went public about their sexual abuse by former USA gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar appeared on stage together Wednesday night to accept the Arthur Ashe Award for Courage at the annual ESPYs ceremony. 3-time Olympic gold medalist Ali Raceman stood in front of the group to receive the award.
All those years, we were told, "You are wrong. You misunderstood. He's a doctor. It's okay. Don't worry. We've got it covered. Be careful. There are risks involved." The intention? To silence us in favor of money, medals, and reputation. But we persisted, and finally, someone listened and believed us.
Also honored at the ESPY Awards were the 3 coaches killed in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Valentine's Day massacre. They were honored as Coaches of the Year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.
Nosso programa fica por aqui. Você pode acompanhar a gente pela nossa página no Facebook ou pelo blog Terra em Transe.
Nos vemos na próxima semana. Até lá!
O projeto surgiu com o auxílio do professor, que passou um trabalho para a gente fazer a ponte, né? Que é a ponte arqueada de Leonardo da Vinci.
Isso foi muito enriquecedor para a gente, porque a gente conseguiu colocar em prática os conceitos da disciplina.
O nosso projeto, além de ter o aspecto técnico-científico, ele teve uma inspiração, o biomimetismo. O biomimetismo, basicamente, é a execução de projetos onde você busca alguma inspiração na natureza para tornar isso funcional e criar um projeto. Por exemplo, tem uma curva, né? Ela existe porque aquele formato consegue fazer com que o peso, a carga, seja distribuído de forma uniforme, ou seja, ele não vai quebrar.
O projeto foi baseado em 3 etapas. A primeira foi a busca de referências bibliográficas. Depois disso, a gente fez um protótipo para poder dimensionar. E a terceira etapa foi a realização da ponte em tamanho real.
Os módulos são compostos por 3 peças. Uma na horizontal, que é uma trava inteira, e 2 na lateral, que possui 3 encaixes.
A gente viu que se fizesse uma seção retangular, a área, a seção que receberia carga, seria muito menor. Então a gente resolveu fazer em formato de arco, que assim os esforços solicitantes se distribuiriam melhor na seção. E temos também a barra onde nós temos os pés, né, que são os apoios. A gente utilizou um material polimérico para criar atrito, né, que é mais um dos conceitos que a gente aprendeu que são pertinentes à matéria estudada.
A nova forma de educação e engenharia dá muito enfoque exatamente ao trabalho em grupo e principalmente às competências que são desenvolvidas quando os alunos pesquisam.
Justamente por ser uma ponte arqueada de Leonardo da Vinci, essa releitura proporcionou essa experiência cultural também. Essa interdisciplinaridade proporcionou para a gente o desenvolvimento das habilidades não só exatas, que são requeridas pelo curso, mas o desenvolvimento de outras habilidades humanas, que são fundamentais depois para a sua atuação profissional. Tem sido uma experiência muito enriquecedora fazer o curso de Engenharia Civil aqui.